Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryanta Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Beda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sabhavedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanata Satiguru Pranatoshmam Om Om Shanti 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 Om. Namaste. Welcome everyone to our Panchadasi Mondays. We covered the last classes or the aspect of our human experience and how easily and how unavoidably we get trapped in samsara. So as we know, samsara is a certain mental, emotional condition in which, as human jivas, we remain attached to object. We remain attached to this identification and this ignorance that keeps bringing us back again and again into a new birth. So that is the proper definition of samsara, and it is synonymous of suffering because whenever we project value and real value in the objects as a means to fulfill and complete ourselves, we end up only frustrated because objects will never do it. And since we know that only knowledge will, so we are here to talk about knowledge, not experience of objects, as we know. The verse 11, Vidyaranya was covering the concept that the self is partially known and partially unknown to us. So we know that we know the self, and the logic that Vidyaranya presents at that stage is that why we know that somehow we know a little bit about the self. It's because we have great love for it. We love the self the most. We love ourselves the most. And then the logic he presents is that we only love something if this something is a source of happiness, a source of bliss, a source of ananda. We don't love object that brings suffering and sorrow to us. We love things that produce, joy and happiness. So somehow unconsciously, confusionally, we know that the self is the source of all happiness and joy. Therefore, we love ourselves the most. We have covered that. But this confusion, due to rajas and tamas, mixed up with sattva in our intellect, this confusion makes us also not know the self. And why we say, what's the logic present to explain that we do not know? We know, but we don't know. We know because we love it the most. And we only love things that provide us with happiness and ananda. And we don't know why, because we still go about running after objects. If we would know for sure, 100%, we would no longer keep running and running to gain, maintain, attract, to push away, and the whole struggle of life. So therefore, it's clear that the self is partially known and partially unknown. And Vidarani was presenting us with the logic that it's something that we all know. Total ignorance is joy, is happiness, is peace, is ananta. So if we are total ignorant, like the guy walking by the village and then it's dark and he stops next, he stands next to the snake, but it's dark, he does not see the snake, therefore he is in bliss, because ignorance provides us with satisfaction, happiness. Like when we go to deep sleep, we are totally ignorant and we are very happy, right? So the problem is what? Total knowledge is bliss as well, we say. Now, that's why we are after total knowledge. And when we say total knowledge, it's not the knowledge of Ishvara. Ishvara is the total knowledge, because the nature of Ishvara is total knowledge. He is actually knowledge, pure sattva. Okay? So when we say total knowledge, is the knowledge, total knowledge in respect to our true nature. So our problem is that we have some knowledge, but we have some ignorance. But if we have total knowledge in respect to our true nature, and then again we say is bliss, knowledge is bliss, ignorance is bliss. The problem is that when we mix up some knowledge and some ignorance, and then we have this samsara suffering condition described by the scriptures. Then the following verse, Vidyaranya brings the example of the child. The child is singing in a chorus, and the parents, of course, they go to listen to one's child. They don't go to listen to anybody else. They say, "Oh, my child is going to say." When they go there, they are very much disappointed, because what is it? I can't really hear my child, you know. So it means to say that the voice is there, but it is somehow covered or mixed up with the voice of many other kids, children playing the same chorus. So the analogy here, so every time that we join, we have some small bits and pieces of ananda by accomplishing our goals, or gaining or experiencing a good punya karma and so on, all these small bliss that we get here, you know, they are like other people's children that are going to be doing what? Concealing my own source of ananda. I have my own source of ananda. I have my own child singing, but there are so many other sources of singing. There are so many bits and pieces of small anandas here and there. So that is the analogy, which is very, very nice, presented by Vidyaranya. We begin today from the verse 13. Experience of everyday objects leads to the conclusion that they are self-existent and self-revealing. An obstruction like blindness prevents an appreciation of the self-existence and self-revelation of objects. So here Vidyaranya presents the fact that this building ignorance that somehow compels every human jiva to believe that objects are real, that they have their own existence, they have their own joy, their own ananta, and they reveal themselves by themselves as if they were real. Okay, so this, of course, this mistaken conclusion, you know, this erroneous conclusion, is due to an obstruction. So he explains that first the experience every day leads the jivas to the conclusion that these objects are real and they have their own light, their own joy, their own ananda. So this, of course, is due to an obstruction. And then he presents the analogy. An obstruction like blindness, for example, prevents a human being the appreciation of these self-existing objects and self-revealing revelation of objects. So the self-existent, the self-revelation of these objects can be, you know, obstructed by a simple, you know, cataracts or any kind of eye disease, you know. So the same way we have this fundamental obstruction that somehow superimposes or projects certain values, you know, or certain realities to meet you know, and this is similar to blindness, you know. I mean, with in the spiritual world, often we see these analogies about as my eyes is open and I saw reality, you know. I woke up, My eyes are open and I can see things for what they are. So this is a certain blindness, a spiritual blindness that makes us not really understand how shallow, how empty objects are, and how everything is just a mere appearance. They exist, but just as a mere projection, superimposition, and the only reality is the light of the subject, the jiva. His light of consciousness is the only source of existence, the only source of ananta, and this spiritual obstruction makes us to behave like blind people, looking for happiness in the wrong place, right? So you remember the analogy of that old lady. She's just there, and she was fixing some socks from her grandchildren, and then after some time she lost her the how you call needle. She lost her needle. And then there was a young woman passing by and saw this old lady looking at the deck outside of the house, and she's out there looking and looking for this needle. The woman felt like, compassion. Let me see if I can help this old lady. She went there and then she started looking as well, helping the lady to look for the needle. And then after some time, 15, half an hour, the young lady said, I said, but please tell us more or less, don't you remember? We are looking all over where more or less it dropped, where you realized, that you have dropped the needle. And then the old lady says, well, it was in the kitchen. And then the young woman says, in the kitchen? And why we are looking outside here, all around the house, in the deck? And she said, because there is light here. So this is kind of the situation. We have our sense organs extroverted, and the light of consciousness shining in the intellect illumines our environment, and we keep looking for happiness in the world of objects. So that is a similar condition. An abstraction is something that hides clear knowledge or brings about wrong knowledge. Either the knowledge is completely wrong, or it's unclear, it's vague, it's abstract, it's confused. Okay, confusing knowledge is even worse than no knowledge, as we have mentioned. An abstraction is something that hides that abstract, clear knowledge. I don't see the object, or I am not sure what it is. Owing to some obstacle, atheists say there is no God, even though God is always physically present, because God is everything that is. Okay, so the atheist is an extreme example of people who denies and rejects the idea that there is God. It's not a small kind of example here, because the entire planet world is turned materialistic. So materialist people, they don't like God, you understand? So this is something that has been going on since long time. I have heard Swami Paramarthananda mentioned it already from 10, 20 years ago, because I go through his audios, that the whole spirituality is declined. The Vedic culture is declined because materialism is taking over. Materialist people, they don't like God, they don't like spirituality. And that is due to this huge spiritual obstruction. They are materialists, their mind is dense, okay? It's gross, it's dense. They only believe in what they can touch, see, smell, feel, taste. They cannot understand subtle realities such as God or even love. They just want more and more and more, because they think their life is just about matter, and matter is available to us so that they can consume and enjoy, everything possibly through our perspective, our receptive, sense organs. perceptive object, perceptive. Because we do not appreciate God, we do not appreciate the self, we think that objects exist on their own and that they reveal themselves. So here's the link. So we believe that there is no such a thing as spirit. We know that in the universe manifest, there are two principles operating. One is spirit, which is self, and the other is matter. And matter is also energy. Energy is subtle matter. Okay? Matter is grossified energy. So we have the spirit, which is the self, consciousness, existence, and we have matter slash energy. So because we do not appreciate the spirit, our mind is too gross to appreciate the spirit of things. So we do not know what love is, we don't know what empathy is, and we have no attraction to the concept of God as the creator and the one managing and sustaining this apparent universe. So this is a spiritual obstruction that most people have nowadays. And then what we believe? We believe that the objects are real, they are self-revealing, they are self-generating, and this is all due to Maya. Maya superimposed this cosmic ignorance on all jivas. And Ishvara has to manage to keep it in balance, some knowledge, some ignorance, some knowledge, some ignorance. And nowadays it seems that there is more ignorance than spiritual knowledge. Only the self is self-existing. It stands alone, as we know. Objects depend on it. Objects are created out of consciousness. Yeah? They are created, they exist out of the existence of consciousness, and they are maintained by consciousness, of course, in association with Maya and Shwara, and they are recycled, they're destroyed and recycled as well, all due to the causeless cause of the universe, which is consciousness, existence, Brahman. Only the self is self-existent. It stands alone. Everything, the entire universe depends on it, and the self is free and independent of mithya. Of all this superimposition, the self remains totally, absolutely free. Although everything depends on the self, and the self is free from everything else, and everything happens without the self doing anything. It's just it is its nature to accept superimpositions. Maya somehow once in a while wakes up and say, I'm going to superimpose something on the self. And the self, such as the space, remains there. It's okay. Nothing can touch me because I pervade everything. No? That's the nature of the self we are. We stand alone. Objects depend on us. Abstract knowledge is the object is there because I see it. And unabstract knowledge, the object is there because I see it. And the mistaken knowledge is I see the object because it is there. The object is real. So even worse is like I am because the object is there. That is even worse. So you can say that objects are there because I am, you know. You can say that the objects, I see the object because it's there, and the worst possible ignorance is that I am because the objects are, which some people believe that way. Or at least they believe that the consciousness of the experiencer is as real as the object, and they come into existence simultaneously, and they don't exist without one another. This is another kind of ignorance. So the object is there because I see it is knowledge. I see the object because it is there and it's real. So my knowledge of the object depends on the object. So no, my knowledge does not depend on the object. My knowledge is self-knowing, self-illuminous, and whatsoever object appears, knowledge is not impacted, okay? Because knowledge is another name for consciousness. So anything else we could say about this verse? Any contribution?
I think this is, Ramji calls it a setup, you know, all this stuff, it's a given, you know, that Maya Shakti and your attraction to objects, and it's part of the Vyavaharika part of you, I guess. And it's very, I mean, even when you have firm knowledge, that doesn't disappear, right?
Yes and no.
The Jesus, yeah. Okay.
What does not disappear? This attraction towards objects?
I guess it's like an empty shell of what it was. This still, the jiva goes out into the world,
Yeah,
and does that, but and I think that's, yeah, an empty shell of what it was, but it
yeah,
still goes
empty
on
shell.
because it's the
Yeah,
setup. Jivas
yeah,
can't avoid.
yeah. The setup is ignorance, you know, some knowledge, some ignorance, and then the jiva falls for the notion that the objects, they have true value and so on. They are really source of ananda, and then they are caught up and they are running towards the objects, or running away from those objects of rejection, you know. So this is ignorance, okay. But when the self-knowledge comes and is firm, it may appear that the yani is still going for or avoiding certain, but it's a different game, you understand. Because even if one does things to gain some things, one does not feel that that is a total necessity. One does not feel the desire is no longer binding. It's more like a preference. One is still inclined to do things, but one is not linking one's happiness with the results of those actions. You know, this is the key. So when we are under the spell of ignorance, our happiness is linked with the attainment or accomplishment of our goal. Okay. But what happens with people like Shemaya and many others who did so many things, they do, but they do out of Ananta, not for Ananta, even though it still appears that they are doing, you understand? So the Yani is someone who still appears to be doing things, but they do things from a different perspective. Either their nature is Rajasic and they have the impulse to do things, and they do things not self-centered, you know. They do things, you know, thinking of the overall benefit of the field, okay. And one's action is dharmic. One's action is never in violation of dharma. So we need to observe the doing of the yanis, because it's not motivated by self-ignorance, even though it may appear in the eyes of others that, oh, it's just another jiva doing things, you know. But it's the inner world of the individual that changed his relationship with the world and the way he feels about doing things to accomplish things. You know, he's doing things, but he's not depending on the results of those things, and the doing should be aligned with dharma. Okay, I mean, if you find yourself still chasing objects, you have to understand that it is relatively common, but it comes to an end. You know, it comes a point that one feels like, I don't need any of this. You understand? I don't need any of this to be happy. Yet I keep doing things. You know, why you do things? Because if you don't do things, you may look like a lazy, you know, person to the rest of the world. And people will associate the fact that self-knowledge could bring about laziness, which is not really the case, because the Yanis in general, even if they do very little, they are very creative and they are not lazy, you know. Lazy is Thomas.
I'm having this exact issue right now because the COVID situation is loosening up in the States. And the expectations of family and friends to go do things and join society again, it's really not what I want to do. I really just want to be alone. I've just loved being alone. And so it's how to do that dharmically and not be tempted into the involvement of all that new stuff, you know. So it's what I'm struggling with right now. I just don't want to go there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking
know
that
that. Go ahead.
Glenn added dharma to this. I think Glenn added dharma to this, and I think that's important because this discussion is, the action, of intention, with intention, but in accordance with dharma, and the dharma being at different levels. But what your dharma are consistent with the universal laws of dharma, but you're doing things consistently with that, knowing that your family and other people are doing it for other reasons. They have, and that's fine. But your action can be out of your dharma, and maybe your dharma is to be alone, or for not to have to be as engaged as we once were. So
Yeah, and it is okay. I mean, in the beginning, it may feel like conflicting to avoid people, that you have been so involved with, but one gets used to with it, because unless it's necessary, I mean, what for? What for? Unless somebody really needs our help. We know that this is all karma, and everybody has to go through one's process, and you see it happening, and you are no longer affected by what people think of you. That's the main thing, and you don't depend on the love and appreciation because your self-love comes from the self. Okay, the verse 13, experience of everyday object leads to the conclusion this is what we just did, huh?
yes.
Okay. Why the self is not known for what it is. So now we're going to begin a conversation into something very subtle, which is Maya and Avidya. The 14th, the universal obstruction to the appreciation of oneself as full, free, independent awareness is beginningless ignorance, Maya. So the first question that would come in our minds is like a saying, oh my God, why? Huh? Why there is this universal obstruction so that we are not fully aware of our, our Purna self, full, whole, and complete, our source, our self as our source of true Ananta. Why there is this universal obstruction? That's the first thing that comes in one's mind. So before David asked that, so I'm asking it myself. Why? Please tell me why universe is projected with this element of rajas and tamas that brings about this eternal beginningless ignorance. This inability to understand our true identity, nature as limitless consciousness, and this unavoidable, as it seems, identification with the body mind, which is limited by all means. So why? I have been asking myself why. And the scriptures, they do not give any explanation to that. They don't say, they just say that it is what it is. But it says something good, which is like, although this ignorance is beginningless, it ends. This video, which is ignorance, which is Maya, which produce in the in the human intellect, this phenomenon called personal ignorance in respect to one's true self, true nature, true identity. So this beginningless ignorance, although eternal in the sense that it has no beginning, for as we know, creation is not linear, but it's cyclical. It either exists as potential, as seed, or it exists as manifest, as the universe, the same way there is no egg that gave birth to a chicken, or no chicken that gave birth to an egg. So they exist cyclically. Okay, it's very difficult for the mind not to think in terms of cyclical and not to think in terms of linearity, you know. But the universe, as we know, comes out of the macrocosm causal body of Maya, Ishvara, you know, and then it shrinks back into its macrocosm causal body, which is the same thing as potential seed, you know, unmanifest universe. So why this beginningless ignorance? My take is that in order for Ishvara to bring about all these beautiful objects in creation, which includes all the sentient beings, which includes the human jiva, the human sentient beings, it had to grossify energy to bring about rajas and tamas. With satya alone, just imagine, I have only satya. Ishvara is pure satya, but pure sattva. But how it's going to create the universe without adding rajas and tamas? So rajas being the energy which allows Ishvara to bring about the subtle elements and grossify them with the addition of tamas to start all these configurations of objects. Yeah? Objects, they come with out of these three energies, and then the subtle elements that keep grossifying and then keeps creating other elements. No? So all of that requires the three energies. And the moment that we bring rajas and tamas into an object, if it's too much tamas, the object is going to be just inert object, right? With no possibility to experiencing this self-consciousness that I exist and I perceive, or even like an insect, they don't think I am, they just respond, but they perceive the environment. This is the sentience, okay? So in order for the sentience to take place, we need a subtle body. We need an object containing three bodies, and in the subtle body, consciousness shines. Yeah? So how Ishvara would bring about all these configurations of the elements without adding rajas and tamas? It's just impossible as it seems. The question is like, oh my God, but why it's so, our intellect, our subtle body has so much influence of rajas and tamas. So why not to create jivas with, more sattva, less rajas, and less tamas, so that everybody very soon, I understood, I am the real soul Savananta. Huh? Why we have so much rajas and tamas that project and conceals, compromising our ability to understand the game of life? Why? It seems to me that it's something that unavoidable. Although sometimes I complain to Ishvara, I say, why not to give people more sattva, Ishvara? Why so much rajas and tamas? But that is my take, that's my speculation. I think it would be almost impossible to create human jivas without, or any other jiva, without the addition of rajas and tamas. And as we know, the influence of rajas and tamas is what compromise our ability to know, to understand, to stay focused, to develop more and more clarity, intelligence, and so on. So why did awareness create this obstruction? And when it did first appear? So to begin with, we know that consciousness, awareness does not create anything. Awareness is a karta, okay? It's the cause of the universe. Nothing has caused it. It caused the universe, but in a very, very unusual way. It caused the universe without doing anything. So we know that consciousness does not create because it does not do anything. It's one without a second. Therefore, you cannot create something if there is one and only one principle, meaning to say existence, consciousness, without any inclusion within itself. Yeah? So if there is something other than yourself, you can say, oh, I don't like this one, let me pull it outside, and now I create a new being, a new reality. So this small inclusion I did not like. No, but there is only awareness, consciousness, existence, free of whatsoever possible inclusion. There is no energy, there is not even sattva. There is only consciousness, existence. So it is a karta, it does not do anything. So who creates? So we will never understand why Maya does that. Sometimes you're gonna hear Ramji say it must be a pervert to do that, you know? Because why to create people and make them suffer with, you know, this inability to understand the truth? Yeah? This Maya, which is often associated to ignorance, creates. Why we call Maya ignorance? Because Maya is not really, it's just a power, okay? It's a power to bring about duality and stack, you know, project, superimpose on consciousness, you know. It's of course, this superimposition is not real. How real is a mirage in the desert? It's absolutely unreal, but it happens. Who does that? Maya Ishwara. You understand? So Maya is this primordial principle brings about duality. What is the fundamental duality? Consciousness and I, Mr. Maya. Mr. Maya, when it comes, they say, okay, you want to enjoy yourself alone eternally. So now I pull myself out of you somehow, and I'm going to project a movie here on you, and I will see what's going to happen here. So now we have Maya and consciousness. So we have the most fundamental duality. So it's called ignorance because it makes the impossible possible. It makes consciousness, which is absolutely non-dual, appear as dual, you know, consciousness and Maya. Maya, Ishwara, Jiva, and Jagat, now in the development of this manifestation. So it's ignorance because it produces duality in that which is absolutely non-dual. Ignorance means an apparent reality which is not real, but it's just apparently real. It's ignorance because it's not true. It's not real. It's wrong knowledge. The knowledge of the dualistic knowledge of the universe, which is gained in the intellect of all jivas, is ignorance because reality is non-dual. And then everything that we perceive and we believe to be real is part of this eternal and eternal universal ignorance. Okay, and then this Maya creates, and it's responsible for this universal ignorance. It is beginningless, and it's beautiful, and it's intelligent. So when we say that it's beginningless, it takes a little while for us to understand, but I'm positive that you all understand what it means, that Maya is beginningless. It means that it's always there. Sometimes it is sleeping, sometimes he's just awakening, and then he poof, he brings about the three energies. Okay, so the same way we experience in our deep sleep that the three energies subsides, and then we go into, or the two energies, yeah, subsides, and then we go in a state which seems to be absolutely non-dual because there is nothing reflecting. There are no object. There is not even the duality subject object. There is no tangible subject. experiencing tangible objects in deep sleep. So we know that in deep sleep, this knowledge subsides. So it's beginningless. It's beautiful in its intelligence. It's beginningless because it exists forever, eternally, okay? Either asleep or awakened. When it awakes, it brings about Ishvara Jivan Jagat. When it falls asleep, it remains in its potential seed as the egg of the universe, as the seed of the universe, the potential seed of the universe, okay? When we say that it's beautiful and intelligent, we are referring to the other aspect of Maya, because Maya brings about the three energies. And what is the most fundamental primary energy? It is Sattva. When it brings about Sattva, Sattva is the intelligent knowledge, power of the creation with the potential to, again, manage the universe and recycle it in a moment to moment. So this intelligence is pure sattva, okay, which is known to be Ishvara, okay, Ishvara is knowledge, intelligence. And then it's said to be beautiful because Ishvara has so much knowledge, that project this universe. And when we begin looking to this universe, we see a certain beauty in it. Is the beauty of perfection, the beauty of precision, the beauty in which nothing happens by chance. There is not really chaos. There is harmony, there is order, everything following its nature. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, scientists, biologists, and other people, they fall in love with nature because they see the beauty. Spiritual people like us, we fall in love, we see the beauty of nature from a different angle because we develop a very sensible spiritual mind that begins seeing God as the universe manifests by nature, even a rock, even a desert. One can go to the desert, oh, but there is nothing here, I don't see a flower. When you see this sand all over, isn't it power? This is beautiful. Every grain of this desert is unique. You understand? It's designed in a way that is never the same as any other grain of sand here. So we see the beauty because we are spiritual people, because we see God in everything. We see the universe, we see the planet, we see nature as God manifest. So therefore, God is beautiful, it's intelligent, and it's love as well, because you have to have so much love to create such a beautiful piece of art. We call it Shvara. Some call it God, like awareness. Ignorance is not a created object. So awareness is not a create object. Like awareness, ignorance is not a create object. Yeah. Okay. So awareness is beginningless, as we know. Okay. We have heard about that. And we say also that Maya, or ignorance, is also beginningless. Why we say that? We say that because the scriptures say that Maya, being something which is not really inherent to consciousness, but it's not apart from consciousness, but it's the most intimate, close thing, something that is not consciousness, it's not part, as we know, consciousness has no parts, the partless whole, but it's so closely related to consciousness, that at the same time, it depends on consciousness and it is as beginningless as consciousness, okay? It exists attached to consciousness as a potential beginninglessly. There is no consciousness, there is no Brahman without Maya, according to our Vedantic scriptures, okay? So ignorance is beginningless. It was not something created. It's not an energy, an object that was created by awareness. It's inherent as a possibility in awareness. So the best analogy we have to try to understand Maya, which is intellectually not really understandable, scriptures, our texts mention again and again, it's not intellectually comprehensible, no, comprehensible, if I said it right. The best analogy that I heard so far is like a talent. Suppose, I have a talent, or Dave has a talent. So, so how inherent to Dave that talent is, and is David its talent, or does David depends on its talent, and a lot of the time this talent remains unmanifest for one life, two lives, three lives, and then one day somehow circumstance proper and this talent manifests. Okay, so a talent is something that you are not really concerned. It's something that's there as a potential. It sometimes manifests, sometimes does not manifest. Anyhow, it's very, very difficult to understand Maya, and it's even more difficult to understand the motivations behind Mr. Maya, why he did that, why he went there, to produce duality on consciousness existence, okay? And why he goes there and produce this apparent world of duality. And when we say duality, the fundamental duality is consciousness plus Maya, Ishvara, and Jiva. And from the Jiva point of view, is the Jiva subject, who believes to be the ultimate object, subject, and object. Subject, object, on the experiential level of the Jiva, is the primordial duality that we are concerned to resolve, till we understand that objects are nothing but myself, because I'm not the mind, I'm not the body, and so on. But anyhow, it is inherent in awareness as a possibility. So it's always there. Awareness is eternal, beginningless, always ever existing, and then Maya is there like a shadow, like a potential, an inherent. It's simply the power of not knowing. So the power of not knowing is a very interesting point there, okay? Because in truth, it brings about pure knowledge as Ishvara, the Lord of the universe. Okay? When we say it's the power of not knowing, it brings consciousness, it brings Ishvara, which is pure knowledge, it's all the knowledge, and then Ishvara brings about the jivas, and among the jiva, the human jivas, and the human jivas has a certain power to know. But as we have seen in the beginning of this session today, or in the last class, this power that the jivas have to know is not clear. It's a confused, it's a unclear kind of knowledge. It's mixed up with ignorance, as we know. Most of our knowledge is very limited. It's always subject to correction, revisions, and so on, and error. So it is the power of not know. It's the power that produces this inability to know in the mind of Jiva Atma. On the other hand, the scripture says that Jiva Atma is Paramatma. Jiva Atma is consciousness. Consciousness is beyond knowledge and ignorance, as we know, is the only reality. When Maya manifests, it brings about what? Knowledge and ignorance. Rajas and tamas, and brings Ishvara, the all-knowing, all the inert objects with all ignorance. Okay, they live in bliss. I have never seen a rock that was crying, oh, I feel so bad today, No, you don't see any inert or anything, So we just see the jivas having this problem because the jivas experience certain knowledge, but it has this ignorance. The not knowing is there side by side with knowing. And we can never trust our knowledge completely if we are really smart and intelligent. It's simply the power of not knowing. But this not knowing is unique. It creates the whole universe. It's the substance of the universe, matter, the physical, moral, and psychological laws that govern the universe and the sentient beings that populate it. So this is the picture of the entire universe, which was created by this beginningless ignorance. You know, it's beginningless ignorance. It's I'm going to create a universe, and the universe is going to be maintained by ignorance. So the most profound meaning of this universe, which is not knowing. It is unique because it is vast, you know, it has all corners of the universe, it has all laws, you know, somehow managing and sustaining and recycling it. So we have these laws, we have the psychological laws, which are important from the standpoint of the human jivas, you know. And we have the jivas, we have all the plants, the minerals, and the fishes, and all other animal. And this matter, this not knowing is unique. It creates the entire universe. I was going to say the most fundamental thing about this not knowing. What I was going to say, something that popped in my mind was very nice. The not knowing of the universe. It is the substance of the universe, matter. Okay, it's going to come back. It's Rajas and Thomas, as we know, it's indispensable for the creation of this universe, okay? And this universe, when it comes into place, it comes and it grows fast to become matter, the physical, material, tangible universe of objects that we know. In the sentence. So we have the entire picture of the universe, all the elements are there, and there is something there which is ignorance. Now I remembered. So this fundamental not knowing, this ignorance, is not only the energy that allows Ishvara to project it, Rajas and Tamas, but it is maintained. It's maintained by this beginningless ignorance. So the not knowing, the inability to know the true nature of reality, the inability to know that the Jiva Atma is the Paramatma, this inability keeps the Jiva running after objects of desire. And in doing so, it produces all the vasanas which are necessary for Ishvara to sustain the universe. So we have seen in several other teachings that Ishvara does not create alone. When he creates because he has the macrocosm body of vasanas of the universe. And who are the people who is producing vasanas and throwing those vasanas in the macrocosm causal body of the universe? Okay, the jivas. So the jivas co-create with Ishvara in the sense that we produce Ishvara, all the vasanas, so that he keeps reshaping this Mithya universe so that the jivas can come back and keep processing their vasanas until they get smarter, they develop more sattva, and then they grow, and then they understand the game, and then they say, I'm out of here, Ishvara, please allow me. Understand? So this jiva, this universe is maintained by not knowing, and it's maintained because the jiva are the laborers. They're producing vasanas, and what are the vasanas? You know, they are all based on the ignorance of the true nature of the universe, the ignorance in respect to the true nature of the self. Because we are ignorant, we do what we do, and then we leave all those impressions, all those tendencies, all those desires in the macrocosm causal body, and that allows Ishvara again and again reshape the Dharma field so that we can come back and carry on doing our work, processing vasanas, okay? Processing our karmas. Did you understand this point I want to make? Any doubts? Okay, this is the universe.
So we can say that ignorance is necessary for Mithya.
Absolute, and we can also draw a parallel here, and then we can understand. So, what brings us back again and again into a new birth? Huh?
Into a new.
I'm just trying to make an analogy.
I don't understand. Sorry. What brings us back?
What makes us, what brings us back again and again into a new physical body, into a new birth? What brings us again and again back into a physical body?
Okay.
Yeah. So what brings?
I think vasanas.
Vasanas.
Ignorance, vasanas.
Yeah. And what are those vasanas? They are all based on the notion that duality is reality. The objects are real, and I want to come back to continue to experience my objects of desire. I want to get more ananda, and ananda is possible by the means of getting what I desire. You understand? So what brings us back, we can clearly see, are all these energies of desire and aversions, incompleted business, things that we want to conclude, we want to resolve. You understand? Attachments, all these things keeps bringing us back. Suppose tomorrow, Claudio, you have this incredible, firm and hard and fast, clear self-knowledge, and then your vasana load, is burned in a second. And when you see you are no longer having any desire or any fear or aversion, just think twice. What would bring you back to a new body? You understand? So just imagine if every human being would just resolve their vasanas and get this knowledge and have no energy that could bring them into samsara. Samsara, it's not something very enjoyable, So if you really understand samsara, so if you are really clear, you have no desire to come back. Imagine if 8 billion people in this planet would get this knowledge and he say, no, I don't go there. What Ishwara would do with this planet, You would have to migrate people from other star systems or something like that. Because you understand? So this ignorance keeps samsara going round and round.
Nitya will lose every sense. There will be no sense to be here if everyone wakes up.
Yeah, because it's created out of the macrocosm causal body, which is another name for the macrocosm vasana of the universe, macrocosm causal vasana, the vasanas of all human beings, you understand? This universe, according to the scripture, was created for the intelligent jivas to come and process karma. You understand? So if nobody wants it, there is no way Ishvara can sustain it. So this ignorance is required for the maintenance of Nitya, maintenance of the universe, maintenance of samsara. You understand? When did your ignorance of anything, including your limitless self, begin? So this is another logic. When we say that ignorance is beginningless, and then we say, oh, how strange. No, it's not possible. And then we ask Claudio, when you are ignorant, when your ignorance in respect to, for example, do you know any astrology?
Sorry, but the connection, I understand nothing. Can you repeat, please?
No, tell me something that you know nothing about.
I don't know what to say.
Okay. So if there is something you know nothing about, you understand? I know nothing about medical science, for example. And then I'm going to ask myself, when did my ignorance begin?
Yeah.
When did it begin? Ignorance is not knowing. You understand? It's not knowing. It exists, beginningless. It appears to be turned into knowledge of something that was there, but I did not know. When I get involved and I want to know something here, and then now I have certain knowledge. of this. But when it began, no, it exists all the time without beginning, okay? Because it's just the absence of knowledge. That's the logic present here. It is always present as a nadi until knowledge comes and removes the ignorance, right? It's always present because the self is always present. So this self, which is always present, allows for this ignorance to be eternally present, you know, until this ignorance is removed by knowledge. It creates a major problem, the belief that objects exist independently of the self and that they contain happiness. So this is how this ignorance translates in terms of human experience, you know. It creates this belief that objects are the true source of happiness, unless this fundamental energy, which is the base of samsara, which allows Ishvara to keep reshaping the field, you know, the conditions of the field, unless this ignorance is personally, privately removed to the individual through one's own efforts. Unless it's removed, samsara continues. So this brings us also to another point here, which is if people think that that could happen, that some people start getting this knowledge, and then there will be somehow a radiation of this knowledge shocked, and then everybody would effortlessly get this knowledge. So the scriptures debunks this kind of notion and says, no, this knowledge is only possible through every individual's effort. It can never be given because this universe here is a very, very well structured cause and effect universe, you know, phenomenon in which each one of us have to work to get the results, the results, the yana result, you know, yana power is the result of my contemplation, my effort to purify, refine my intellect, develop this spiritual sensibility until I can understand. So this samsara can only be removed to each individual individually. It's not its most peculiar characteristic is it does not die a natural death. I love this passage because this beginningless ignorance, being a phenomenon and being in sort of object, even though objects are born and then they die, and this object, this ignorance, not being really an object. Why it's not really an object? Because it does not have a beginning, as we have established. It does not have a beginning, and then it's not really classified as an object. It's something very closely related or inherent to consciousness, which exists eternally with consciousness. So because it is there, and the scriptures say, although it has no beginning, it has an end. And the end of this ignorance is only by the means of self-knowledge. It says that it dies by self-knowledge, but it does not die a natural death. So what is a natural death? It's the death of all objects of mithya. Everything in mithya that appears, goes on for some time, declines, deteriorates, and then goes out of existence. Even stars and planets, mountains, everything goes, grow, and then start declining, and then it goes out of configuration, disappears. Okay? So that's the same thing with each one of our physical bodies. We are born, we grow, and then we go older, and then we are over, we are done, we are out of here, the body goes, right? So this is a natural death, and everything dies naturally, okay? But This ignorance does not die by itself, which it's again contradicts this fantasy that, oh, let's just flow with the river of life. We don't need to do anything. We just open the heart, we feel, and then and then you just repeat some mantras in devotion to God, and then my ignorance is gonna be gone. No, it's not going to be gone. It does not die by itself. It has to be killed. You understand? We need to kill it, and then we go into those beautiful metaphors of putting the sword of knowledge to defeat this universal cosmic ignorance. It's a hard work. We need to have a fighting spirit to destroy this beginningless enemy of knowledge, which is this ignorance, this not knowing of our very self as the only true source of Ananta. Everything that is created dies in due time, naturally, but the nature is continuous unless you work hard to kill it. Oh no, I'm not going to kill this ignorance because I am a loving being. No, ignorance has to be killed. Or if you're sensitive to this word, we can say ignorance needs to be neutralized by knowledge, or it needs to be canceled by knowledge. But I like the word killed, because it's a tough enemy, and it requires that we put up a good fight. Oh no, but Ramana, he got enlightened without any fight. We have no idea of how much hard work, how much fight he has put up in previous births. You don't come out of samsara without putting a fight. That's the fact. That's why it depends on our own efforts to defeat, to persist, to keep doing this work until we are no longer pushed around by this universal ignorance. Because ignorance is prior to time, the idea that one day we will all automatically get enlightened is nonsense. Although you cannot remove it by typical action, you can remove it by exposing your mind to the teachings of Vedanta. If your mind is open and if you are properly taught by a qualified teacher, the means of knowledge will remove or cancel your ignorance. I don't like much the word remove. I like better cancel or kill or neutralize. Because when I think about removing something, so you have something that you don't like, you're going to remove. What is the problem? We always have to find another place to put it. No, let me remove it from here and put it somewhere else. No, you want just to kill it, to cancel it completely. If your mind is open and you're properly taught, keeping the mind open is the discipline that sets the stage for Vedanta's magic to work. So what is the meaning of keeping the mind open? It's leaving all notions, all beliefs, ideas, spiritual ideas, all great notions we have about how enlightened we are and so on. So we just leave it outside and we become very, very innocent, with an open mind, so that there is no resistance to the teaching, there is no obstruction, there is no distortion, it's just keeping the mind clean and open and available. And then later on, when we come out of these nididhyasanas, we can take back our notions, ideas, and beliefs if we still value it, When it's clear how ignorance creates the creation, as you understand it, it will disappear, but not in the way you imagine it now. okay, what's Ramji trying to say here? When it is clear how ignorance creates, it's important to understand to a certain degree how Maya, although Maya is difficult to understand where he came from and why he does what he does, but it's important to understand how this ignorance takes place and in the which way it somehow influences or controls our human experience, you know. So when we understand Maya, this ignorance, you know, and once we understand the way it brings about the creation, as you understand it, it will disappear, the ignorance, but not in the way you imagine it now. So I guess Ramji is trying to say that the universe is not going to disappear. It's going to remain there, but you're going to see it differently. Okay, you're not going to see it as a source of true happiness and true ananda. You know, to keep it simple in terms of our everyday experience, the objects that present themselves to me on a moment-to-moment basis, my discrete experience, are created by ignorance. My ignorance creates the object in here, leaves it in the causal body, you know, the macrocosm causal body, and then those universes, they manifest back physically, materially in the physical realm, you know, of the universe. Again and again, it goes causal body, vasanas, desires, and then it manifests so that we can go and get it. To keep it simple in terms of our everyday experience, the objects that present themselves to me are created by this ignorance. Okay, the self did not create them, and I didn't create them. Maya creates, but Maya does not create alone. I mean, in truth, it's Maya because we don't like to call Ishvara ignorant because Ishvara is so beautiful and so intelligent. Is so much pure knowledge. So this ignorant side effect phenomenon we blame on Maya. We keep Ishvara out of it, you know. But Ishvara creates, and Ishvara does not really create alone, as we have established. Ishvara needs the jivas as well. Okay, our response in the moment to moment is going to keep reshaping. Why it's so important to protect the Dharma field? Why it's so important, you know, to uphold the Dharma? Because we need a field in which this spiritual work is possible, you understand? Because we want it to be a place where jivas can come and process their karma and grow, you understand? So is tomorrow the field is completely compromised, and then no really growth is going to be possible. For example, in this planet, what would be possible in this planet then? Would be just a place to come and exhaust our papa karmas. You understand? If no growth is no longer possible here due to the deterioration of the field, we can say that still is a place that Ishvara reserves for all those individuals, you know, with a great papa karma account. They can come to exhaust bad karma, you know, to pay, to exhaust bad karma. The self does not create it. Ishvara creates it. I didn't create it. No, I did not create it because I don't have the power to create. Ishvara creates, but I am my degree of responsibility because I'm providing Ishvara with my actions in a moment to moment. And to the degree that my actions are beautiful, this world will be a more beautiful world. And to the degree my actions are very, very ugly and self-centered, tamasic, and so on, this world is going to be like hell. Ignorance did it. You may be surprised to hear that life is leaving you, not the other way around. So this is another way to look at it, because we believe that we are living life, but life being this entire system, you know, of the macrocosm causal body in which all vasanas are there, and then they keep bringing back the jivas, and the jivas, due to this ignorance, keeps running, and after the imagined objects of desires, thinking, believing that they are going to be resolved, to put an end to this human condition, human drama. And by doing that, he just reinforced this macrocosm body of vasanas. So, and then we say, oh, my vasanas are leaving me. I'm not living. I'm not really doing much. I don't even much have a free will. I thought I'm making choice decision here, but it's just the system is just doing that. And I'm being lived by life, meaning to say I'm being lived by this system of vasanas, desires, new births, and then actions that are going to bring about more vasanas. Any questions at this point? Any complaints?
I'm just curious. Is the yani, is that limitlessness? I mean, is there a connection between ignorance and being a yani? Like, to me, yani is something that is created and something that dies, or something that ends. That's not limitlessness. It's different from the self. And so, if it seems like it's the yani who's like experiencing, ignorance and dealing with, and acquiring knowledge and using knowledge to expel ignorance. Is there a connection there between, is the yani, is that limitlessness, or is it really limited?
What do you mean by jnani?
What do I mean by yani?
Yeah, the jiva with self-knowledge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I mean the jiva. Sorry.
Okay. And then can you repeat your question, please, David, because I couldn't understand it from that. So jiva, not jnani.
So to me, is the jiva limitlessness too? So ignorance is always there. It's beginninglessness anyway, but now it appears that you can kill it, so it has an ending. So it's not the same as consciousness. Consciousness is, Satchitananda. I mean, it's limitlessness. There's no beginning, no end to it. And yet ignorance is different because it has, you're saying you're teaching us that it has no beginning, but it has an end. And I'm wondering, so does the jiva, does the jiva the same? Does the jiva have no beginning, but it has an end? Or is the jiva have a beginning and an ending?
The jiva as well is beginningless. That's what brings up the notion of the eternal jiva. Eternal jiva is the fact that Ishvara is not alone in the creation. Maya brings about Ishvara jiva and the field in which the jiva can experience the projection, the object. Okay, so jiva is as beginningless as Ishvara. So we say that Ishvara, Maya Ishvara are beginningless, and the jiva being integral part of Ishvara is beginningless, and Jagata is beginningless, meaning to say creation is beginningless, and jiva is one of those three factors within creation: the creator, the creation, and the experiencer knower of the creation. Okay, so all of this is beginningless. Okay, and the jiva as an individual soul, it may have an end as well. It's not only he ends the ignorance that brings him back again and again, but the jiva itself has an end, and the jiva ends when he realizes his true nature in Brahman as Brahman. And then it's said that the jiva dissolves into consciousness the same way the river dissolves into the ocean, and without any resistance, because why not to claim and embrace my limitless nature? Why to keep my limited nature again and again with other births? So it's the same logic. Why to go back there? And you never know the condition of the field, you understand? If there are no desires. But yet, there are some other arguments that brings the notion of avatars, which are souls that somehow brought down, not falling, but descending, just to give a help to other jivas in protecting and preserving Dharma, you understand? Because the Dharma needs to be preserved. Does it answer your point, David?
I'm going to have to reflect on this and see if things,
Yeah,
you know,
Jiva is beginningless as well.
What's that?
Jiva, Maya, Shwara, Jiva, it's all beginningless. It exists, everything exists within consciousness as a potential for apparent manifestation. It appears, it's not real, okay? It's just a projection, but it's there potentially. When we say that Ishvara is beginningless, when we say the creation is beginningless, and then of course Jiva is also beginningless. All jivas are there beginningless, but even the same way that ignorance dies, the jiva dies as a soul when it somehow it claims and embrace its fundamental, primary, superior nature as consciousness, as Brahman, and then there is no need to come back. That's the logic.
I guess it just feels to me like the jiva is beginningless. It's potentiality, but if you use it as the stream of the river, then the river flows into the ocean and it resolves into the ocean again. So to me, that's different than dying. Resolving into the ocean is different than dying.
Yeah,
dying
totally.
End.
Yeah,
Means end.
absolutely.
And going back, that means to me that you resolve, you kind of go back into, it's like a water droplet emerging from the ocean as as being drawn up by into precipitation, and then it gets dropped back into the ocean again, and it resolves back into the ocean again. But it doesn't necessarily die, it just resolves back into the ocean. It becomes part of the whole. So my whole thinking in this whole thing is being a jiva is that it kind of emerged from the ocean of consciousness, if you will, and have these experiences, and then resolve back into the ocean of consciousness again.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily die. I don't
No,
necessarily
it's not dying.
stop.
I was using the word dying in the context of ignorance has to be killed and needs to die. So the individual soul disappears in Brahman to as Brahman, you understand, which is a different notion. Some people still get a little bit uncomfortable because some people say, oh, but if I'm no longer an individual soul to enjoy my enlightenment, so what is in there to me? I'm going to run out of existence as a soul. So you just disappear from that stream of consciousness, of individual consciousness, and you are back into the source, so to speak, and you have no concern because you say, no, I don't care for it anymore. I mean, not again, and I'm okay in any case. Why? Because my conscious existence is going to continue manifest as all creatures of the universe. I will be shining in the intellect or in the subtle body of all creatures, and I'm going to be shine even in all inert objects of the universe with my existence. Existence brings about names and forms of objects, and my consciousness aspect of my existence brings about the reflect consciousness, the I am, I exist. So I will be showing up in any case, you understand? But this individual soul has no desire to come back as it is, I mean, it's something difficult to wrap our mind around. But I can tell you, once we have a clear understanding of samsara, what it is to live here governed by desires and fears. And then I understand back those jokes, like the child that was born there in Pune, 30 or 40 years ago. When he came out of the womb, he was a very, very evolved soul. When he came up, and then the doctors hit him in the back, instead of crying, he just said, "Oh no, not again, not again." You understand? Why? Because he's he's a wise soul. No, I don't want to go through the same thing again, But you need to have that kind of wisdom to see through and gradually during our lifetime to be done with all these desires for objects, as if we really need objects to enjoy, to appreciate and enjoy our ananta, our fullness and completion. It's very simple logic. We can see it operating in every one of us. So next week, we're going to go into the big picture, the beautiful, intelligent ignorance, Maheshwara. The verse 15 is nature, Prakriti, composed of Satya, Rajas, and Tamas, is a subtle, inert form of awareness that is capable of reflecting awareness. It is of two kinds. So this is a very nice subject. I'm sure we're going to enjoy it. We're going to have to keep our minds very sattvic. Sometimes it turns to become a little technical, but I'm sure that we are all pretty much qualified and up to it, okay? We're going to go a little bit deeper into this unfoldment of the universe, beginning from this primary nature, Prakriti or Maya, many times is referred to nature. Okay, so if we have any questions, we can play a few more minutes again. So any complaints as well? Otherwise we meet again next week. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, beautiful, Arlindo. It's a tough subject to get your head around, Maya. Yeah, it is, but I'm kind of getting it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, but brilliant explanation. This is a great book and great explanations.
Okay, I'm trying my best here. Okay.
Yeah, doing brilliantly, Arlindo. Thank you.
How are you doing, Gert? Are you enjoying our group, our class?
Can you say that again, Arlindo? You were breaking up.
I was just saying, how are you doing, Gert? Have you been enjoying? I guess so, otherwise you would not be coming back.
Yes, I'm a happy customer. I'm satisfied so far. Okay.
Good. Okie dokie. Okay, my friends, so let's say goodbye. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everyone. Namaste. So we meet again soon, Thursday or Monday. Okay? Arrivederci. Bye-bye. Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Arlindo.
Thank you.